On that note, we're going to call this.
Zing!
You've been rejected,
We're gonna
Dylan.
catch a
We're
break.
going to call this meeting to order at 6:02. We have Donna Bradley has rejoined us, but she's ill again already. And we have another new member. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Zaira, and I have two last names. So Zaira Flores Marin, and you can just call me Zaira.
Anything else?
Yeah, so I decided to join the Park Advisory Board because I live adjacent to Claggett Creek Park. And I've noticed a lot of things that have happened in that park, and I want to be a little bit more involved and make sure that I'm more active in the processes and the different policies that affect the parks that we use and that I utilize with my family and my dogs. So
Thank
I'm
you.
excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for volunteering. Okay, approval of the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Any discussion? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as written. Any discussion besides that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes are approved. Just a second. All right. Interested citizens, this is not the public hearing. Public hearing hasn't been opened yet. None. Public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing on the smoke-free policy for the city parks. So we are an advisory board, so we won't be passing we'll be passing on what we decide to the city council. So I don't have a list yet.
He must be. I hope he is. Because I don't know what this person's doing, but it's.
DeVore? I don't know.
Bob DeVore, come on up and talk to us.
I've been reading about this in the
Turn your microphone on. It's on?
Test.
There you go.
I've been reading about this issue in the Keizer Times, and I heard about the hearing tonight for public testimony. I live close to Sunset Park. I use that a lot, as well as Keizer Rapids Park. I kayak a lot, and those are the two parks that I use the most. And I think it would be a real tragedy if I had a deal with smokers. I was a smoker for over 30 years. I quit cold turkey, and it's funny, I get sick around smoke now. I had a hard time after I quit smoking visiting my mother, who was an avid smoker. I just had to go outside and sit and talk to her when she was still around. But I couldn't deal with it if I had to deal with a smoker in one of our parks. It's just, it makes me sick. Besides the litter, I get enough cigarette butts on my sidewalk on Fall Creek Drive with cars driving down the road flicking them. It's unfortunate, you know, a few bad apples can spoil a whole bunch, but I don't think smoking belongs in public parks anymore. My wife works for the city of Silverton, and they just passed no smoking for their parks in the city of Silverton. There's other surrounding municipal entities that don't allow smoking in the parks. So I would be really happy if that was passed, that there would be no smoking in the parks. That's really basic all I have to say. I just wanted to give you my input. I feel bad for the smokers. I hope they quit because it's really unhealthy, and breathing secondhand smoke is proven unhealthy as well.
Okay? Thank you for your testimony.
My pleasure.
I have a question for you, Ms. Card. Do we need to read this email testimony into the record? Anybody volunteer to do that?
Want me to do it?
Yes.
Okay, we'll read it. There we go. This is from Kelly Martin. Thank you. Dear Keizer Parks Board, I saw that you are looking at passing an ordinance for smoke-free parks in Keizer. As a longtime Keizer resident and a mom of 2 children, I am so thankful that you are moving in this direction. I appreciate your dedication to the health of our town and reducing our exposure to secondhand smoke from both cigarettes and vaping. As someone that frequents our local parks, I do find it concerning when people are smoking in an area that children are found and where people are going in an effort to be healthy. I strongly support having an ordinance that makes the entire park tobacco-free at all times. I believe that this helps alleviate any confusion as to where smoking may or may not be allowed. Again, I applaud you for your working to create this policy, which leads to long-lasting change. It shows me your dedication to the health of our community, and you are creating a culture of health for generations to come. Kelly Martin.
Thank you, Kate. Carol Dorfler.
Hi, Carol Dorfler. I live on Shoreline Drive. I'm here to speak just very briefly. I hope that you will pass a no smoking ban in our parks in totality, not just work on Keizer Rapids Park. I think if you ban one park, you need to ban all the parks and put up signage to that effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Rhonda. How are you tonight, Rhonda?
Good, thank you. I'm sorry, I had to write this out because I know I have 5 minutes limited time tonight, so I want to cover all my bases. So,
Well, I don't have a
Is it fun?
clock,
oh, okay.
so I can't eject you out of the chair.
Okay. Thank you. Firstly, I want to thank you for allowing my testimony at the January meeting. I felt that we had a good exchange of information, and I respect your opinions and the time that you are allocating for what I think is a very important amenity at all of our parks, and that is fresh, clean air. Once again, I would like to state that I'm fully supportive of banning smoking of any means in our parks. And I have a few points I'd like to share. Firstly, enforcement. As mentioned before, most cities expect the community to enforce this rule at the parks that have proceeded with a no smoking policy. I would not think that smoking should be handled any differently than any other park rules except for firearms. Take, for instance, the no off-leash dogs rule outside the dog park. This is a rule and that I as a citizen can feel confident in asking someone who's not aware or is ignoring this rule to please put the dog on a leash. If the dog is being obnoxious and the owner will not control the dog, I would like to feel that I can call the police and get protection. Without a rule, my options are diminished. So as far as an enforcement of any park rules where someone's life is not being threatened, the police should respond to calls at their discretion. For example, a burglary will take priority over a call about smoking in the park. As with any rule at the park, the same policy should be followed, whether it is a fine or a warning or being asked to leave the park, as the city of Portland is their policy they follow. As they say, rules are meant to be broken, but having no rules because a small percentage of citizens will break them is not a good reason to not have rules that protect the majority of our citizens' rights. In this case, the right to breathing clean air. Secondly, I'd like to talk about designated areas. There's been lots of discussion on designating areas, which I feel is kind of cumbersome in deciding whether to eliminate smoking in the parks. Every park is unique in its design, but every park has trees, grass, and bark dust that are flammable. Trying to find a location in every park that meets the criteria of 1, fire safety, and 2, that does not impact other park goers is virtually impossible. For instance, the paved path above the amphitheater. Smoke permeates the entire upper level of the amphitheater where people eat at the tables and seating for the handicap occurs. I can tell you from personal experience that it ruins the entire experience of an outdoor concert to have smoke drifting over into my space. Trying to determine specific locations is not only time-consuming of staff's jobs, but also expensive in that signage needs to be posted. Signage that needs to be maintained in areas where cigarette butts need to be cleaned up. Thirdly, signage. I feel that posting signs that ask to please do not smoke or any signs to that effect will not be effective. It is not the only rule that needs to be followed in the park. All rules need to be followed by park users. Our focus right now is smoking, but there are other rules that need to be adhered to and other rules that may be added in the future. Smoking does not need to be singled out. It again adds to park staff time and expense to the budget. The simplest solution is to post no smoking in the park rules at the park's kiosk. If you're going to create a few more signs, then post the entire park rules at different locations. Additional signage is not necessary except possibly in times of severe fire hazard, as is during a drought. In closing, at the January West Keizer Neighborhood Association general meeting, a smoking ban was discussed, and we had a pretty good discussion on it. I brought it forward because I know that we've been talking about it. I called for a straw poll. Out of 17 attendees, 16 raised their hands in support of a ban. I think that in the general population of Keizer, you would find an overwhelming support for this issue. I commend you in having done your part in moving our parks to be smoke-free. Please don't kick this important issue down the road again. Our societal norms have changed, and the majority of citizens accept that the right to breathe smoke-free air is a priority over the desire for others to smoke. So I would hope that you would send a recommendation to the City Council to ban all smoking in Keizer parks. It's the right thing to do. Let the City Council vet the issue through discussion and public hearings.
Well, you made it by 10 seconds, Rhonda.
I timed it at home. Thank you.
Okay?
I have a question. You were talking about like dogs in the park on leashes and stuff. We don't enforce, I mean, that's a rule out there at Keizer Rapids Park, but that's abused every day, all the time.
Right.
So how do you enforce those things?
Well, I think it's community enforced. And if there's a rule there, like I said, I could say to somebody, you know, that is a park rule that you need to keep your dog on a leash, so
Right.
please put your dog on a leash. Otherwise, I mean, there are some people who are going to listen to you and some people aren't, but it's something that, you know, park goers who are going to obey the laws, the rules, can use to refer to.
Yeah, I've always said that what they should do in the dogs problem that's going on at Keizer Rapids Park is the police should give a warning to those people, and that would sure slow that down. It's not going to stop it completely, but it would make major changes on it.
I think the concern was taking a lot of police time in park issues, which maybe are not as important as other things out in the community, but.
We already
yes.
have police that are out there when we have concerts that's not doing anything except just there for visibility. So those guys at least could do it on that day, like on a Saturday or a Friday.
They're in the park, yes.
Thank you, Rhonda. I guess so. Carrie Ann? No. You,
Carrie Ann Bushka.
thank you.
I'm here for two capacities today. as a homeowner, as a taxpayer, and a park goer around where Roland lives. Roland, what is the name of that park across the street from your house?
That's Country Glen.
Country Glen. So I take my St. Bernard on a leash to Country Glen. My husband does more than me, but I like to say that I do because it makes me sound like I exercise. But I'm also a Marion County employee, and I oversee all of the prevention, tobacco prevention that happens in the county. And we've reached out before to the city council and come and given some information. And so tonight I wanted to come, and I'm here as an educator. I cannot advocate one way or the other whether you should do anything, but just to educate. And so I wanted to really piggyback on what everybody said. Smoke-free parks are actually twofold. They address not only tobacco smoke, but they can address marijuana smoke, which will be soon coming to more prevalent issues as we move forward. It's here, right?
But it's already against the law to smoke marijuana in public.
Sure it is. It's also against the law to not have your dog on a leash and not to do other things. But really, part of the idea of having smoke-free parks can be twofold. So we talk about smoke-free completely. It's not necessarily just tobacco-free. And really what we've done in Marion County, all of the parks are smoke-free. In Salem, all of the parks are smoke-free. It can be very confusing when you designate a smoking area versus a non-smoking area. As a legislator a long time ago told me as I was working on my own policies, it's very confusing and we want to keep things consistent. We don't want to confuse our citizens because they are the ones that elect us, and we want to keep things as clear as possible. So when we say that this is an area that is smoke-free, then that allows us to either self-police, to politely ask somebody, as Rhonda said, please don't smoke. This is the ordinance that supports that. This is our community policy that supports that. And then if it does become a nuisance, then we have other options to enforce. And you can utilize those law officers if they are in a place where they're seeing that. That can be something that happens. However, we find, statistically speaking, across all of the smoke-free policies that have been implemented across the nation, that really self-regulation is just enough to get by. And we don't really need to do anything else. Providing signage that is clear and consistent and actually that's seeable. We don't want to put that in the corner, but it kind of creates the expectation. This is where my family comes. This is where I bring my dog. This is where I come to recreate. This is a recreation area. I don't need to be dealing with either marijuana or tobacco smoke. And just to provide some statistics, only 19% of adults in Marion County actually smoke, and less than 9% of youth ages from 11th grade and lower use tobacco. So we've come a long way. I won't quote that other Virginia Slim commercial, but we have come a long way in reducing our prevalence of utilizing tobacco, and we're trying to get to 0% for youth as well, so that 9% is far and away a better number than what it used to be. So I just offer some of that little pieces of information, again, not to sway you in either way, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Do you have a question, Jim?
Yes, I do.
Would you like to ask?
Thank you for your information. In Marion County, does the sheriff department, let's say they're up on the North Fork somewhere and somebody's smoking in a park, they drive through, will they ticket them or just ask them to not smoke?
I haven't really heard of anyone ticketing anyone, and it's usually if a minor is using, and now it's 21 and under, there will be citations for a minor possession of tobacco, but I have not heard of anyone actually receiving a citation for utilizing tobacco, or I can't speak speak to marijuana, but I haven't heard of that, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any
Did you
other-
want this to include tobacco, vaping, and marijuana?
Yes,
So you want it to be smoke-free
it
is,
should be smoke-free,
Mhm.
yeah. It's not just tobacco-free, it's smoke-free is really the best umbrella, because then you don't have vaping and marijuana and tobacco, cigarettes, or any other product.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's the end of my list. Does anybody else like to speak?
Well, open public hearing.
What?
Open public hearing.
I did. Seeing no one else, I guess the public hearing is closed then? Is that correct, Ms. Lockhart? Yes, Jim?
Well, since I'm the one that started this, I would like to make a motion that we send to City Council a recommendation that all Keizer parks are smoke-free. And in that recommendation, that there not be an ordinance where people can get ticketed. This is going to be a compliance by, self-compliance. And that all parks be so signed. Not the compliance part, but that we don't need an ordinance where somebody gets a misdemeanor.
Before we go on with that any farther, should we actually take some time to craft this a little closer before we go on? Or you just want to give something general to the city council and let them fight it out?
Well,
Yes, Mr.
If, Mr. Chair, if I recall right, I think we still have a motion left over on the table from last meeting that was made as it related to signs designating, thank you for not smoking in the parks. The Parks Board did in fact pass that motion. So if we're going to continue with that recommendation, Mr. Chair, I recommend that we either have a discussion about that or put that discussion to bed and move on before we make any additional motions.
Point well taken. So, let's finish the discussion of what we had last month.
So I have something to add as well for the discussion. So today I took it upon myself to go to Claggett Creek Park on the side of Dearborn where the parking lot is. And I just parked and I got out of my car and I started counting how many cigarette butts were in the parking lot. And I counted about 80 of them just in that section. And I took pictures, so I didn't have time to print them for you guys, but I did take pictures of how many cigarette butts were littered in the park, and it was very, very sad. There was kids playing in the parking, in the playground, and there were also cigarette butts on the playground itself, by the swings, and it was just, so I would like for us to open it up for discussion and be able to really bring forth a recommendation that includes maybe signage and a little bit more specific wording, because there does need to happen like a cultural change within our community so people know that it's okay for you to enforce non-smoking and for people to know that you're not supposed to be smoking in the parks, because it was really sad to walk around just that parking lot and see how many cigarette butts were on the floor. Like, it wasn't just one or two, there was like 3 or 4 piled on top of each other. And there was also a lighter, just in case someone didn't have one in their pocket. It was there available for them on the floor, so.
Thank you. So, is there any discussion on the motion we had on the floor last time?
So, Mr. Chair, we, and forgive me for not recalling the date, but it was a January City Council meeting, along with presenting the Parks Prioritization Plan, which I'm happy to say the City Council adopted. The council heard the discussion as it related to the thank you for not smoking signs or words to that effect. Did not seem to be opposed to that idea, but recommended from the City Council that disposal mechanisms be considered in the discussion at all of the parks, meaning smoker
Disposal?
poles or ashtrays or something along those lines.
Even if we ain't put a smoking ban in, they want that included?
That was not the discussion that was brought to the City Council. We went with the motion that was approved at the Parks Board. So that was not discussed.
Okay.
I think
I think Roland's probably going to be able to speak to that. Oh, better.
Well, you gotta raise your hand, I can't see, I'm too old and feeble. Up. Or are you too old and feeble to put it up that high?
Chairman, have you recognized?
Yes, you may, thank you.
If I remember correctly, Matt, on the city council meeting on January 2nd, the discussion, and it was brought up by the mayor, nothing finalized, but she did bring up the possibility of having a smoking designated, one of those,
like smoker poles.
pole, yeah.
Right.
And that was not finalized, but that did come up,
Right.
of having a smoking pole in designated area for the
In,
park.
in conjunction to the please don't smoke in our parks sign.
Well,
or
I mean,
what?
we haven't, when
It-
you
it
talk
was-
about motion, we'll fine tune all that, but right now, as of right now, that just came up for discussion.
Right.
I like what what Mrs. Bushka said about eliminating a lot of confusion, as far as having one solid thing. And it makes a lot of sense, because one of the things that I notice in the park where I live, and I pick up every day, the same, I can tell you where the smokers go everywhere. And it's, I can see how that would cause confusion. I know that there's an area for, people talk about their smoking area away from that, but, from a main area, but I think they will cause a lot of confusion. And that's just as an observer, I'm not recommending nothing, I'm just saying that Ms. Bushka made a very good point to consider. But nothing's final, and
Right.
the only thing I would say is that, the discussion was open right now, because, like I said, the mayor's one that brought the polls up for each park. Thank you, sir.
So Matt, did you get the, at least suggestion from the city council that we give them something a little more specific?
Well, I
Or-
think going back to the original discussion, which was the ban in some parks and the designated in other parks, they weren't interested. They want us to do the homework in terms of the Parks Board and come back with a solid plan, whether that's, whatever the pleasure of the board is. Again, and thank you for the clarification, Councilor Herrera, in terms of, it was the mayor's recommendation, but I did not get any feedback one way or the other from any of the other councilors other than some head nodding going, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So, again, just the messenger. I wasn't trying to push an agenda. I said this is what the board came with, and this is what I'm bringing back from the city council. And
I just wanted
or
to get
excuse
an
me, if we want to point out a specific individual, the mayor.
I just wanted to get an idea of which way they were leaning, because
Right.
if we recommend something, it's just a recommendation.
If I may,
Yes, Jim?
I really don't care which way they're leaning, that's not our job. Our job is to make a recommendation, and then they do what they feel is right. Did we vote on that last time, Matt? On the...
Well, not being the record keeper, it is my recollection based off of the minutes.
What is it that you want to know?
If we voted on no smoking in the parks?
No, the only thing, you voted that, Dylan Duran moved that the board recommend to council that signs be placed in every park that say, "Thank you for not smoking." That passed.
Okay.
And then that was the only one that passed. The other one that Matt made was to postpone forwarding the recommendation to council until a public hearing had been held. That passed as well.
Okay. With
So
that, with that clarification, then I think we can move forward with my motion, because it doesn't affect that, thank you for not smoking in the parks. It doesn't affect that signage. I mean, they can decide that they don't want that signage, they're just no smoking, or you could still say thank you for not smoking in the parks. So I don't think we need to readdress that. I think I think it would be cleaner to address the complete ban first, see how that goes, and then start paring it down from there. That's just my, I think it's cleaner.
You don't need to convince me. I just remember we had a motion on the table, and it was approved by this board, and so, I don't want to treat motions as just a perfunctory means of you doing business. I mean, it was something that was brought up, it was approved as a recommendation. However, we postponed that recommendation until after these individuals came and gave us the opportunity to hear from them, and I think that I'm certainly appreciative to hear from everybody that was here. I mean, that was the intent, to hear from folks. I mean, Eric did a poll with the Keizer Times. We had 85 responses, most of which were in support of a ban. We've asked for information, we've gotten information. That's all I'm saying. We had a motion, it was postponed until after this, and now the intent, as I understood it, was to readdress that original motion after we had the public hearing. But if I'm wrong, then that's fine. I'm just relaying back what I read in the minutes and doing my homework.
Well, I thought, Debbie, you said that the motion was to put the signs, "Thank you for not smoking." That was the only one, right?
Yes. And then to postpone, well, yeah, but that was not recommended to council because the next motion was to postpone sending that recommendation to council until after this. That would seem that you could elaborate further on it, you could withdraw that motion. Somebody can, if somebody wants to withdraw that motion, whoever voted in favor of it can do so, can move to re-vote on it. And you could be, if you want to make the language stronger, make it be part of the park rules. I'm not sure about making it not an ordinance. The park rules are an ordinance, and if you add smoking to the park rules, then you basically have to make it part of the ordinance.
Well, you can make it an ordinance, but not with a monetary fine.
None of the park rules have
Right.
monetary fines,
Right.
so it
Well,
wouldn't be
that's what
necessary to put
that's
that
what I
verbiage
meant.
in there.
I wasn't the one who made the motion, Dylan was, so, I mean, you need to be talking to Dylan.
That's cool. I have a couple of things to say. What are the park rules? How are they enforced at all then, if it's not for by means of a ticket or anything, since we're bringing that up?
It's a reminder sign to point people to and say, hey, could you please abide by our rules? We'd appreciate it. If not, I can supposedly kick somebody out of the park for it, but again, I'm not going to get in a physical contact fight with somebody to kick them out of a park, so.
Yeah.
You're a big guy.
Hey.
So,
Insurance probably won't let him kick.
Jim, what exactly, your motion was just for a ban in all the parks for all smoking, right? That was it?
Yes,
So it would
to
just be
go
another
along with
rule on the signs that says no smoking. That's,
With no enforcement.
well,
Well, let me,
we just went around that it would just be the same as all our other rules, yeah.
the hits just keep coming here. Let me tell you why I put that in there about enforcement. I called Captain Teague, or Chief Teague, he was a captain for so long, and he called me back and he says, I'm glad you called. They, with the addition of the new officers that are going to come on board in mid-November, well, they'll be on board before then, but on the street by themselves by mid-November. He wants to make a lot bigger presence of the police in the parks. And he doesn't want them to be cigarette cops. He is very reluctant to have his officers have to go down there and enforce the cigarette rule, handing out tickets or whatever. And we had a pretty long discussion, and I understand where he's coming from totally, but that really goes beyond what we're talking about here. That's more a council level thing where the policy is made, where John can talk to Chris and ferret all that out. If we don't have, it's just an ordinance like the other ordinance we have and there's not a fine involved, then I would think it would tend that the police probably wouldn't do anything. I'm trying to make it easy on him, and simply for the fact that he just doesn't want this because he doesn't want his officers having to be cigarette cops. And I use that phrase, and he says that's perfect. So, again, that's something he would be at the council meeting, and he could, let his feelings be known to city council, and they can ferret that out. So I think if we make it without, just the ordinance, without any monetary punitive damages, that might free them up from having to do something, because he says, look, if it's a law, we have to enforce it. So that's the reason I added that. I know it sounded a little weird, but I didn't want to say why until we got into the discussion part.
Whether there's a financial fine or not, it's still a law.
Well, but they don't go down there now and necessarily make, they're not going to go down and enforce they're not going to give somebody a ticket for breaking a park rule, because you can't write a ticket if there isn't, I believe, if there isn't a monetary thing. That's something that council is going to have to talk to him about. I'm just trying to make it a little bit easier for the police force, and that's the reason I added that language. Again, it's above our pay grade. So, and that sort of discussion, I believe, Roland, would be with John there. You guys could hash all that out and make a decision partially on his feelings. And I hate to really do that at this level, but I did want to bring up what he told me. I think it wouldn't be fair not to bring it up, so I did.
Okay, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman David. My personal opinion is I would love to have a ban on smoking, but it seems like it's unenforceable, and we don't have manpower, and the police don't want to be cigarette cops. So I would recommend that we have signs that say, "Thank you for not smoking," or "Keizer Parks appreciate you not smoking here," and provide disposal poles where they do smoke, because they're going to do it anyway. We can't really stop it. And let's give them a place to put their cigarette butts.
Did anybody second my motion?
No. The discussion started right after you made your motion. There was no.
Well, actually, it needs to be second or not.
Well, okay, so before we get into that, I've got a couple of things to say. So I think we've got two decisions to make. The first one is, we need to discuss the poll thing. Do we want to add polls or not? And then after that, we need to discuss whether we want just "Thank you for no smoking in the parks," or just straight up "No smoking" on the signs.
But you've got it flipped.
No, I don't think I do. But, so, I personally don't think that smoking polls are going to be a good idea, because it basically signals, hey, this is where you can smoke. And if we're going to ban smoking, I think we should ban smoking and not encourage it in any way. So I would think it'd be kind of mixed signals saying no smoking, but here's a place where you can conveniently dispose of it. So I'm not in favor of that, yeah.
But the reason I say it's flipped is if we deal with the poles and the containers and everything, and "Thank you for not smoking," and then we turn around and approve sending to council "No smoking," then we have to go back and.
Well, we've already decided some sort of verbiage going on some signs, and if we need to change that, then we can change it. But if we add a new poll thing, then it changes the whole thing entirely. So if we decide on the poll thing first, and if it doesn't appear, then we can just go on with the motion that already exists. So, yeah.
Okay, I recognize myself. So the only place it'd make any sense if you put them at the entrance to the park so they could put their cigarettes before they come into the park.
Sure.
Yes, Kat? Or,
Right.
sorry.
You're fine. So, so I have some, I don't know if I can make a recommendation or not since I wasn't here from the last meeting, but there is an ordinance already in place for the Keizer Parks, which I have in front of me, Section 14, it's regarding smoking. And so it says, "No person may ignite or smoke any tobacco or tobacco product or any other material on any park trail, restroom, or in any fire risk area or in any area additionally designated by the director." So there's already a ordinance in place. I'm not sure if that ordinance is being followed, or if maybe we need to go back and maybe make an amendment to that ordinance that's already in place, that's already written, where instead of it saying designated by the director or those specific areas just in general. So that might, and then also like, I guess a question for you would be like, how is that ordinance being enforced? Do we have signs in designated areas in park trails? Because if that's the case, then people are already breaking the rules and they're obviously not being fined since it's already in an ordinance that's been around for a while.
Yeah, I mean, you just gave the detail. That doesn't cover the entire park. It covers key areas. Really, I think the way that was designed was to keep people that are in maybe more of a natural area on a trail from smoking, where you could potentially have an extreme fire hazard right now. If you're standing in a parking lot or on a irrigated turf, it's less likely to be as much of a fire hazard. So that's kind of where that rule is coming from. As far as enforcing it goes, I mean, it's just like we just talked about a minute ago.
So there's just a lack
know.
of enforcement. It's what it seems to be. Okay.
It's really hard to enforce, yeah.
Yeah. And so I just think like something that we could consider would be making an amendment to that rule rather than making a new rule and just revisiting it and changing it rather than it being to those specific areas, being to all the parks. And I agree with your testimony that it really is going to make a lot of confusion if we have a post there and there's signs saying, "Please don't smoke." Well, at the same time, that's very confusing. And if we're trying to change a habit and change the culture that people have, that's not going to help at all in making sure that people are not smoking in the area. Because if I'm a smoker and I see a non-smoking sign, but I see a post, I'm obviously probably going to want to take out my cigarette and like smoke and put it in there and make sure nobody saw it or something like that. And so it needs to really start like people need to make sure that they're not confused as to exactly what's going on. And the other thing too is that Portland Parks and Recreation, they passed a non-smoke and they passed a smoke and tobacco-free park policy. And so I have that here with me, and it talks a lot about the questions that you guys have, like how do you enforce it without people being penalized? And so it's just a policy, but people do have the right to smoke. There's no federal or state regulation that bans them from smoking. The only thing that it says on their policy is that park employees are able to let the person know that they can't be on the park for that day. And so it seems like a really good policy. I mean, is it going to be followed? We don't know. It just kind of depends on the community and how empowered they feel to be able to tell someone to not smoke because there's a sign there.
So you need to understand, we just make recommendations to the city council. How they deal with our recommendations and whether they amend their ordinances up to them. Okay?
So, yes, and I understand that. So it would be like recommending to amend or recommending to revisit that amendment that's there because it's already there. We could definitely advise them to revisit that amendment because that's kind of, it aligns with what we're talking about, specifically about smoking.
Okay. Yes, Wayne?
Question for Robert.
Yep.
Let's take Claggett Creek Middle School, where the cigarette butts accumulate per Zyra.
No, is it the park?
Claggett Creek Park, not middle
Oh,
school.
no, I'm sorry, not the middle school. The Claggett Creek Park.
9% of them are doing this.
How big of a trash is all that cigarette butt cleanup?
It's not fun. It's very hard. I mean, literally each one is this big. You can't hardly grab them with a litter stick. So you're either picking them up by hand with gloves on, or you're using a backpack blower, or you're sweeping them. So, I mean, you're talking to sweep virtually an entire parking lot would take forever. So it's very challenging to pick them up.
Yes, Matt.
And the
And,
majority,
and they, if we don't get them picked up in a timely manner, you get a heavy rainstorm, it washes them down the storm drain catch basins.
and there's a lot of people that have lunch there, and you just sit there and watch them smoke all day long when they're on lunches. Every time I go by around lunchtime, there's always guys sitting in their truck smoking cigarettes, throwing them out the door. And, you know, this is an interesting topic, and this is one that I know you all generally know kind of my point of view on it. It is a legal, lawful activity for adults over the age of 21 to do in the state of Oregon. I am not a smoker. I hate smoking. You know that I don't let my parents in the house after they've done it. It's not something that I enjoy, okay? When I've talked with other people, city councilors with the city of Salem, talked to Marion County commissioners, I've talked to people that live near parks in Portland, and there's two main issues that come up. One, litter, two, fires. Because people will go near the public right-of-way where they are legally allowed to do it, and they dispose of it on the ground, or they throw it into areas that create fire. So when the smoking pole discussion was discussed, it was put it out near where they can legally do the activity anyways and allow for a disposal. So again, if the conversation is to move forward saying ban it in parks, ban it in parks. If that's the way the board wants to go with the recommendation, that's fine. But taking into consideration that the fire that happened last year before the eclipse was likely due to the fact that somebody was smoking back in Keizer Rapids Park, where it is prohibited from smoking in natural areas. So I just think, you know, we need to look at this as a wholesale issue, not just a single issue. I think being the chair of the Watershed Council, you know, Wayne, we were out there this last weekend. It's illegal to litter, and guess what we spent a lot of time picking up? Litter. I had a 33-gallon garbage bag full of trash. And that was 2 weeks after I had been there and cleaned up on my own. But, you know, those are two separate subjects, but I'm talking about, you know, trying to encourage, frankly, I mean, encourage people not to do it in general. It's a nasty friggin' habit, all right? I thought if we put the polls out, we can call them habit polls. That'd just be interesting. But anyways, those are some of the things that as I've been researching, and I've been talking to some folks, again, with Salem, with Marion County. Again, I was Marion County Commissioner, but I wasn't talking with staff, and that might have been my fault. And then again, talking with folks that live in and around the city of Salem near some of those parks. Those are the main issues that were discussed: litter and fire. So.
Yes, Kat.
How close to the public right-of-way can we have a pole if we were to put one?
I don't know the exact answer to that. I'd say pretty close, within 10 feet, I suppose.
Because if we put it like at the entrance of the park, before you're actually in the park, but like right on the edge,
Right on the edge, yeah.
you could put it
Yeah,
right
I
on the edge.
mean, where it becomes
and
right
then
away in
you're
park,
saying-
you could put it on
Hey.
the edge of the park.
Yeah, because then you're saying, hey, we're not smoking in here. We don't allow smoking in here. Here's where you can put out your cigarette.
There'd be some challenges to that in various areas. I mean, you wouldn't want the smoker pole, for instance, at Claggett Creek Park out by the right of way, because cars drive right past that and they get out and then they wouldn't see it.
Right.
So, I mean, in parking lots that are 100 feet long, you'd probably want multiple poles at.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's
It would be tricky, but
challenges to it, for sure.
okay.
Well, I was just gonna say, by the park that I go to the most, there's like 4 or 5 different ways I get in. So, trying to capture that,
Mhm.
wherever I might be entering it. May I speak again?
Sure.
So,
Come
I
up
hear
here. Come up here.
So again, I'm speaking just as an educational, not as a tax-paying citizen of Keizer. So I hear your debate about, should we do this? Should we do that? You know, what do they do? There's litter. So we know research says that when you create a smoking ban that is collective in the park, that litter does go down. Regarding becoming a cigarette cop, that's an interesting perspective that I think could be clarified with talking with the Salem PD, the Silverton PD, the Marion County Sheriff's Office. and find out if they've become or they feel like they've become the cigarette cops. I think that it's good practice for us as educate. Boy, I just almost got into the other piece. I'm really trying to stay on my game here. I'm just educating you.
You can talk as a citizen, too.
Well, I have to go to this seat if I do that. So if I switch, I'll do that. So you
You're
know,
just going to go
like-
back and forth.
Yeah, I know. It's like
You
against.
want my hat?
I-
There you go.
Yeah. So the idea, though, that there are policies, and I love that you brought that, Portland policy. I try to stay away from Portland policies because we're not Portland and we know we don't want to be Portland. But we do have, we just helped craft the Silverton policy. We actually have staff in my office that do that sort of work. So these things have been talked about in multiple venues, in multiple city councils, park councils, all across the United States. There are great opportunities to send a message to the citizens of Keizer that the parks and recreation areas in Keizer are for your health, for your recreation. And that you care about youth and families and dogs. A lot of people care about whether their dogs are exposed now to smoking. I don't know if you've noticed that, but there's that. So it shows that you could make some really nice cultural shifts, and you're really using that term cultural shifting. And that's what we need to do as
Microphone.
We need a bench. Okay, so as a parent and as somebody who grew up with smokers and who was who didn't, maybe younger people weren't on the, do you want to sit in the non-smoking section or the smoking section of your restaurant? When I was a kid and I was flying, I was sitting in the non-smoking section, which was just right next to the smoking section. I mean, these kinds of conversations have become really kind of antiquated because, as I said, sitting in this seat, that 19% of Marion County residents use tobacco. We're talking about what is good for the majority of our citizens and of our neighbors. We're talking about how do we address whether or not, can I police this? Well, I'll tell you, so as this person that works at Marion County, we have our offices at Center Street. And we have a lot of folks that have, on the third floor, we address mental health treatment. And we have a lot of folks with mental health illness that they have a higher smoking prevalence rate. So we had quite an issue with tobacco use at Center Street, at the health department, okay? So we have signs and we have like no smoking in red on the pavement. We've got the little, put your butts here, and I'm not sure why, but they're like on the side, right? So like, what, you can't even make it in the can now. You're like getting your cigarette butts around the can. So that's kind of an odd thing. But regardless, it's the interaction that's personal that makes a difference. And I have yet be told to scram or get away when I have gone up to somebody that is smoking on the property that's Marion County that is required to be smoke-free, and I just tell them politely, I just want to let you know this is a non-smoking area, and if you choose to smoke, if you want to continue, you can smoke out on the road. They go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Well, that's hard to believe when there's no smoking signs maybe on the pavement. I think sometimes people just don't see it as something to, like, they're in their habit, right? It's something, I mean, the gentleman here said he smoked for 30 years. My mom has smoked for 60 years. I've dealt with that for not that many years, but I've dealt with that for a really long time. And it's just that whole conversation about please don't smoke around Lee, please don't smoke around my kids. It's a cultural shift. And when we as when we, as Keizer citizens, say we care about the health and welfare of our community citizens, then we can send a stronger message that says, this is something that we care about as a whole. It's a collective, it's a shift. Most people don't use tobacco anymore, so why are we creating policies and practices for the minority that are doing it?
Okay, so we have no smoking signs on the big toy, and when we had engineered wood fiber, I found cigarette butts consistently inside on the wood. Second of all, 10% of the male population's red, green, colorblind, so red on black doesn't really work for people like me.
Okay, that's good to know. So, there are lots of different options for signage. There's lots of different options for policies. And Mr. Taylor, I appreciate your really a strong consideration for the time that might be taken by our Keizer Police Department. And when you make a new policy, you might actually have to spend a little bit more time enforcing it and talking about it. You know, I'm sure that we've already had some opportunity for tobacco to be on the front page of the Keizer Times of well, gosh, I don't know how long ago that was, but you know, the more we raise the issue, the more press we get, the more we send a message. And while we may take some time initially, it does change the culture, and it starts to, you know, people that come to the great concerts that you have at Keizer Rapids, they will know that, you know what, that's no longer tolerated. And they'll come still. We know this by research. And they just will go usually into their car and smoke, or they'll leave and smoke. So we know statistically, and research says we don't lose business. People will still come to our parks. And you might still have some littering and trash, but it statistically would say that it would be reduced. And there's opportunities to change the signs, make different colors, and to have a really nicely crafted policy that covers your issues.
Mr. Chair, right. Thank you, Ms. Bushka. You've been very helpful.
Both of you.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, yes.
Mary Ann, 663 Stone Mason, and this is Marion County.
I was maybe the most against a smoking ban when we first started this conversation, and I have slowly been slipping completely to the other side. I've got a question. With that said, what do we do about withdrawing can I just withdraw my previous motion from last month entirely, or do we need to call it for a revote? What's the deal on that?
Yes, you need to ask that it be, there's a word for it and I can't think of what it is, but ask that it be readdressed. Someone who
Okay.
voted for it can ask that. So then you vote on voting on it.
Isn't it reconsideration?
Yeah, reconsideration.
Yeah, and you can only do that the very following meeting.
Right, which
If
you're
we
at.
waited till next meeting, you couldn't do it.
Okay, so yeah, here's what I'm thinking. I'm just kind of, I'm not in favor of the polls. I kind of want to just go for a ban, just add it to the park rules. The ordinance be changed to no longer have any specification on trails or bathrooms or anything else that it says, and just be no smoking in the parks. So I don't know what.
You need to make a motion
Yeah.
to reconsider your.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to reconsider my motion from last time of adding "thank you for no smoking" into the parks, and then after we do that, we can make a new motion. Okay, all right, yeah. So that's my motion to readdress or reconsider the last month's motion.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made to reconsider our previous motion to just put up, thank you for no smoking. It's been seconded by Wayne. We'll reconsider
Debbie,
the
you have
motion.
to have two votes, one to reconsider
Right,
and then
that's what I
one.
said.
That's
Right,
what we're
okay.
doing right now. We're moving to reconsider the motion that was.
12 years, I learned a little bit,
Wayne seconded.
just a little bit.
All right, and it's been seconded by Wayne. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes.
So now you move to withdraw it,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, I'd move to withdraw the motion.
We have a motion to withdraw the motion that we just reconsidered. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kat? I didn't see.
Well, it wasn't Clint.
I wasn't Clint, but it could, there's another lady down
I
that
know.
way. Is there any discussion?
So at this point, I'd like to make a motion.
Oh,
We
gotta
haven't, we
do-
need to
finish
vote
the-
on withdrawing his motion now.
Okay.
Robert's Rules of Order can get really confusing.
You can discuss it though, right?
You can
With the
discuss it,
withdrawal. Yeah.
yes, but you can't make another motion until after we vote.
Can I add something?
Is it discussion of the motion?
Yes.
All right.
This, if we vote to withdraw that motion, then depending on what happens between now and when we make a decision, we can go back to that.
Yeah.
So it's not dead, it's just, we're not gonna consider it until later if we have to or want to.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of withdrawing the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Now,
Oh, okay, go ahead.
now we can go on if somebody wants to make a
Now,
motion.
can I remake my
Well, I
motion?
think Wayne had asked.
Got the original motion.
Okay.
Well, let's keep your motion a little simpler this time, Jim. Please. A suggestion by the chair.
Jim, why don't you let Dylan make it? He's got it. in his
Yes,
head
let's
already.
let Dylan make it. Dylan's more articulate than you.
He's not more articulate than
Not
I
only
am.
is she a phenomenal city recorder, she's also a bus driver.
I know I should.
Since his motion just got wiped out, let him do it.
If he would like to, that doesn't bother me at all.
Thank you, Jim.
All right. I move that we amend the ordinance, that we recommend that we amend the ordinance that currently exists about trails and other certain specified areas to just be a covering ban on smoking in the parks.
Second.
Just a minute, Jim.
That was pretty simple. Don't get more complicated.
Let's not make a mockery of the process. Let's-
Point of question there, Ms. Lockhart. We actually can recommend altering an ordinance?
Yeah, you sure can. You can
Is there
recommend
actually an
whatever you want.
ordinance in place? That's what I want to know.
there's
I'd like
an
to see the
ordinance.
site again.
Park rules are an ordinance.
About no smoking in natural areas, and then basically the director
The
can.
discretion of the director, okay.
Yeah, so do you need the ordinance? number?
I would like to hear it, please.
Okay, so the ordinance number is 2007-558, section 14,
Thank you.
page 17, line 10.
Very good.
Roland has something to say.
Yes, Roland.
May I be recognized?
You see, the.
This body can only
little
recommend.
shelf there is in the way of your hand.
Pardon?
I can't see it through
everybody
that
can see me
shelf.
Except you, apparently.
I can see that.
You're always the one, t-shirt, t-shirt, t-shirt.
But you can recommend whatever, but you can't like make an ordinance. You can change.
all
an
we do
ordinance.
is
Am I correct, Debbie?
Yes, yes, and that was what his motion was, to recommend that council amend.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Do you have any comment on the ordinance, Robert?
Nope.
I'm going to staff for information, so.
I do have I didn't clarify, but I assumed that by changing the ordinance, that would then go through the normal processes that change the signs and stuff.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Oh, are you ready for discussion? Okay, Mr. Taylor, do you want to discuss?
Okay, we're not reinventing the wheel here. As it was explained. Lots of other people have this, so this isn't a big issue. We're not gonna have people carrying signs outside City Hall demanding that they get their smoking rights. 81% of the people in Marion County don't smoke, So that is a vast majority. Now, of all that 81%, there may be some that say, well, I think people should have a right to if they want to. And so I think what we're doing here is consistent with all the other government, municipalities, county, state. Like I said, we're not reinventing the wheel. And as far as the police department goes, I respect Chief Teague immensely. And this is something, like I said, is above our pay grade when it comes to that. And I think that will all be ferreted out in council as far as policy. He makes the policy with the police department, what they do with ordinances. But I think they can figure this out. And I'm sure that he will talk to Jerry from Salem and probably Jason at Marion County, what they do as far as enforcing this. And I was told by the Parks Department in Salem that the police don't enforce it. They just ask, the Parks employees pretty much ask, point out to people there isn't smoking allowed in the parks. So this is mostly self-compliance. In Salem, it has made a difference. Again, there wasn't a baseline, so they can't say this many people don't do it now as what did before, but there is a noticeable difference, and it's very much appreciated by park users.
Chair
So
recognizes.
I think we should support this, send it to council, let them do the dirty work, and be done with it.
I recognize myself. Jim, you should know better than use City of Salem as an example. People in Keizer don't like
I
Salem.
know, but they are our neighbor. I don't like
Like
to
we
use
don't want to be Portland, we don't want to
I
be
don't
Salem.
like to use the Portland proletariat either, but then,
So if we really truly want to be inconsistent with all the other neighboring jurisdictions, we're going to have to ban vaping also. Marion County bans vaping now, right? Does the City of Salem ban vaping?
yes.
So are we going to be consistent?
Yeah, that would probably,
Well, now you have to amend your motion.
well, I seconded it, so if I
Billy
approve,
needs
you
to-
want to
if you
amend
want
it.
to ban vaping?
Does the word smoking not cover all forms of tobacco? And, well, and then I guess
It's not
vaping isn't
tobacco.
tobacco necessarily, so.
Marion County bans
Okay.
all tobacco use and
Well, then-
vaping. And by the way, at Marion County Public Works, I still find cigarettes in the parking lot.
Well,
Okay, I move that we include vaping and other inhalant products? I don't know what's
Wait a minute, I use an inhaler.
Change motion to say smoke-free.
That's still not including vaping then?
yeah,
Is that-
vaping
Is
is
this,
different.
does that include vaping?
It's smoke-free, and then you get specific, like
Okay.
vaping and tobacco and any other, like e-cigarettes. But we can help craft that language.
Once it moves on, yeah, okay,
No, I'll accept that, so.
okay.
That isn't the way it's done.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. Read Robert's Rule of Order. We have to move to go into motion. But let's not go there because we're already running really late. So, do you want to restate?
No, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, we're still in the motion. We're not back in discussion, so I'll wait.
No, I was going to ask him if he was going to restate his motion.
That's why I'm waiting.
Okay.
If I may, your motion read, that we recommend council amend the ordinance that currently exists about trails and specified areas to just be covering a ban prohibiting smoking in parks and to include language to cover all forms. That will be up to the legal department to fine tune that. I don't think it's necessary for the Parks Board to go
No, it's nowhere
into any
close
more
to being the
detail.
end of it.
So that wouldn't be as amended then.
No, I think that's fine. You've
I'm
just discussed
comfortable
it.
with what you just read.
Okay.
You don't want to change it? Okay, fine.
Well, it sounds like she included my
Yeah.
slight amendment.
No.
Yes, I
She
did.
just read it.
Oh, that includes vaping?
Language to cover
Yeah.
all forms.
Yeah.
But this, never mind. All right, are we done discussing this? Because I'm confused now.
are we, the motion's all squared away, right? Okay. I'm just,
When they
okay.
throw it back at us, we'll find out.
So, there's a couple issues that I want to bring up. One, the notion of punting to the city council for them to work this out and finalize is exactly why it came back to us to begin with. So, that's an issue that I take, you know, that's why we're back here, is because we sent something to them that wasn't clarified, and they said, no, you need to do your job.
Well, this is
No, excuse me, I'm talking, thank you. No, you stated on the record, you're gonna punt to the city council and make them figure that out. That's what you just said less than 2 minutes ago.
Figure what out?
To figure out this ban thing. That's precisely what you said just about less than 2 minutes ago. So in addition to that, it is a self-compliance issue now, because it's a behavior issue now. We are spending an inordinate amount of time on a very small population of a very small population of people that frankly just don't give a crap, period, about what any sign has to say, about what any individual has to say. It's a personal responsibility issue. It's something that I've said this entire time. Personally, I have a hard time trying to legislate behavior to encourage something without proper education. If we want to do this right, it needs to be an educational opportunity and try to get out the word and discuss things from a more objective standpoint rather than pulling a knee-jerk response on this and saying, well, we're just going to throw up signs and call it good. In fact, you know, it was even said by Ms. Bushkin, I apologize if I said your name wrong, but, you know, the very issue was argued almost for us that people are going to ignore signs regardless of what the signs say, that they're going to stand there and go, oh, I didn't know. Well, that's going to happen regardless. We're dealing with issues of waste, of fire, and other issues. It's hard to try to legislate behavior when you have no authority, when you have no enforcement, and nothing backing it up other than self-compliance, which should be the conversation, in my opinion, now. And again, this is coming from a non-smoker. This is coming from a father. This is coming from somebody that looks at this issue as an opportunity to say, look, be grown, handle your business. We have enough government telling us all these different things right now, in my opinion. And if I go to somebody that's choosing to not comply with a desire to be smoke-free in our parks, then I walk up and I say, hey, would you mind moving? In the very small percentage of cases where they choose to be an idiot, I'm just going to leave. There's a reason I don't go to the regional parks for the most part, because people don't care. We had dogs at the Big Toy. We had smoking at the Big Toy. We have it happen all the time at Keizer Creek Park and some of the other larger parks. I go to the neighborhood parks, almost never have the issues. It's mostly litter at those. That's my own personal opinion. I think if this is going to be a real functional conversation, it needs to be more about education and more about encouraging proper behavior rather than throwing up perfunctory signs saying you can't do this when we know good and well that they're going to continue to do this. So that's just my own personal opinion.
Yes, Jim?
When I didn't use the word punt, but anything we do, we are punting it to city council. We don't make the rules. We only recommend. So that was what I was referring to. I wasn't saying, but a lot of this stuff would be worked out with staff.
Correct.
You know, with Shannon on legalities and all that. So that, again, that's above our pay grade, and that's what I meant by that.
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity to clarify.
And as far as people not paying attention either way, people drive drunk. You know, people throw things, garbage out of cars. Now, if it wasn't illegal to litter, just think of all the garbage that would be there. But it's illegal to litter, so 95% of the people don't litter.
And the ones that do fill up a 33-gallon
You
bag
can't-
of rubbish
I
weekly.
will agree with you. You can't legislate morals. You cannot legislate behavior, but you can sway behavior by rules.
Or through
Don't
education
litter,
and.
so you learn not to litter. When they first came out with seatbelt laws, I'm old enough to remember thinking, how stupid. How are they telling me to put a seatbelt on? You know, it should be my choice.
Sure.
Not thinking down the road of other people that I was hurting, you know, insurance policies, everything else that go up because people are killed.
Sure.
or maimed by not wearing a seatbelt. Now, those things take a long time. It isn't going to be immediate that we're going to see everybody in the world, oh, we're not going to smoke in the park. But I'll bet in 5 years, there's a huge difference
There's
about
been less-
people
Yeah, right. No,
not doing it. You know, any social change takes 20 years. You know, smoking used to be everywhere. There wasn't smoking sections. You could go in the hall or the stairwell at the Salem Hospital and smoke. And so, but over the years, things change.
The piece, Mr. Chair, I think that you're missing, okay? It's the education. We can throw up signs all day long, okay? But if there's not the education campaign and there's not the culture shift that drives that, then they're just signs.
Wouldn't.
And then the same thing comes into play as a self-compliance issue and a personal responsibility issue where somebody has to feel, the same person that's going to feel comfortable going up to somebody that's smoking in a park with a sign is the same person that's going to have the same responsibility to go and do that anyways. And if there's nothing behind that, then what do you have? You're left with the exact status quo that we have now.
If you don't have an ordinance, you don't have anything behind it.
Just a minute.
But I'm done.
Ma'am.
And I don't disagree with everything you're saying. I'm just saying that you can't legislate.
I'd rather educate people and get
Well, I
people
think there would be
away
ed-
from this stupid habit that's killing people, okay?
I
My
think-
dad died 7 years ago, almost last month, because of this habit. It pisses me off.
My father died from lung cancer, from smoking. So I think that this is, in a way, educational in itself, and we can put other signs up there educating people.
David, I'd like to call for the question.
Just a minute, that's a whole nother motion. Can you give us? It is. I don't want this to come back to this board. We have spent years on this. You're out of order, Jim. Can you give us something? Because I don't want the city council, we gave them designated only. And that said, they didn't like that. They don't like anything we give them, so we need to be more specific. I want to know if you can give me something. I'll get to you in just a minute.
So, Chairman, do you mean policy? Are you talking about what can we give you? Is that policy?
Like wording, how we'll word it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
like I said, we've tried this several times. It's been in this front of this board multiple times. I'm really tired of this issue, if you can't tell.
I think what's changed is that you have the Times saying that, was it 85% of your readers? So 85% of readers that, right.
It was
So
85
that's
respondents out of 38,000 people, for clarification.
65, 35.
Okay, so again, you have folks that are willing to take their time to come and speak to you. You have folks that are willing to take the time and opt into take a poll.
I understand that. What I'm saying is, if we're not specific enough, they're going to throw it back at us again.
So
I don't want to see this back in front of this board.
I can understand that. There is policy that we can help craft, and there's existing policies. We have plethoras of policies. So yes, we can, from what I understand from Mr. Taylor, it is not the Parks Advisory Board's job to craft the policy, but to make the recommendation, and then you can punt it to us and say, we have resources within the county that will help us craft the policy. And we're happy to do that.
They seem to want more from us.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Just a minute. Mr. Press is next.
I was going to address directly that thing, but go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Press is
Yeah,
next.
all right.
He's in
No,
the
no,
citizen
okay.
chair. So he's the press, now he's a citizen.
Okay. Eric Howell, I live in Keizer. I work for the Keizer Times. I am speaking on behalf of the paper at this particular moment. Almost every week you'll see ads in our paper that are what we call public service announcements. They're ads that come to us from organizations that have a message to get out. We don't charge them for it. It helps us fill up small and/or large gaps in the paper when we don't have something else to go there. If, education is the aspect that you're worried about with this, I'm glad to offer the services of the paper as far as, we can incorporate that into our regular run of PSA things. I can't guarantee it's going to run every week, but, it's one more way you can outreach. And also the city produces several newsletters themselves that you can include these things in. And those are just, from my own position, what I saw as education opportunities.
And,
one of the reasons we
and
love
I
Eric.
would also offer, Mr. Laurie, you're concerned about why don't we educate? And I would say that we have done a really vast job of educating. That is why we only now have 19% of Marion counties that smoke. That used to be very different. We continue to educate. This is another piece of education. When you say that we put this policy, this ordinance in place, that is a piece of education. And when I'm in the park walking my dog and I see somebody smoking, I don't want to be there. I just have to walk away because I can't go up to them and say, "Excuse me, this is a smoke-free park." So you're empowering me as a citizen to say, "This is a smoke-free park and you need to stop smoking." And like I said, I have never, and I do say that a lot, because just like everybody else, the majority of people, we've all been impacted by smoking in some negative way, or tobacco use in some negative way. And when we have that opportunity to change the culture, to shift it, and we can go up to somebody and say, somebody that's probably way bigger than me and a male, and like I could be intimidated by them, I still have your backing to say that, no, this is not okay here. And yeah, they can be a jerk to me, but I'm going to tell you, I've talked to a lot of people over my lifetime and asked them not to smoke when I have that ability, and I have never had anybody be mean to me or turn me away or tell me to go jump in the lake or anything like that. So I think that this is another step of education, and I love that Eric's offering the newspaper. We actually will celebrate Keizer's success. This is a big success to say Keizer Parks, all Keizer Parks are smoke-free, inhalant-free, vape-free. That's a huge success. And so we, as Marion County, we will help you celebrate that success, and we will publicize that as too in any way that we can. So, thank you.
Yes, Dylan.
The thing that got returned to us last time was actually, I believe, the reason that it was returned to us was because it was confusing. It was a designated areas item. This is a lot more clear. This is like a single item that covers everything. So I could be wrong, and then maybe the council's intent wasn't to get us to do something less confusing. But that was my perception of it, was that they wanted us to clarify on what exactly areas are we covering with this rule. And in this version of our proposal, we're saying all areas that are designated as a park. And that's a lot more clear. So I'm hoping that by giving this to them, that covers that requirement that they gave of us. So I covered that. I think pretty well with my motion. Additionally, I think to address what's changed since last time, not only that we've changed what we are proposing or recommending, is that we got a lot more feedback. We had this public hearing. You did a very informal poll on Facebook and got basically universal response of, yeah, I think smoking isn't for parks. All of it is relatively anecdotal, but everyone willing to speak up about this has said, yeah, we don't want smoking in our parks. And I think that is important to consider, that anyone willing to come out and say stuff to us has been in favor of making our parks smoke-free. So that's what changed my mind about it. Additionally, the information we got today from Ms. Bushka, I hope that's right, is that even making a rule that is unenforceable will improve the amount of litter we have in the parks, and people will just generally feel empowered by that rule, even if it actually has no legal backing or financial backing by getting a fine. So that's why I changed, and that's why I made that motion, and I think it should cover what we
So
needed.
Matt, what was the mix of your 32 gallons worth of trash?
What's right by the middle school, the majority of it was candy wrappers and chips, and but actually there was a fair amount of cigarette butts, mostly actually down in the creek area where the homeless camp, which is also not allowed in parks, and that's where we saw the majority of it. A lot of beer cans and different paraphernalia down underneath the creek area where the homeless camp is.
Would that be, what park was that in?
It was
again?
at Ben Miller Family Park.
Oh, okay.
But the majority of the rubbish really is from the kids. When they're going by, they're throwing their candy wrappers and stuff like that, and so.
I am not a smoker. I don't like smoke at all. I never have. I have always tried to convince everybody that I ever encounter to stop smoking. But I was very against the idea of giving more regulation. But after hearing some testimonies and what Marion County can do, I actually have changed. I'm actually for a ban. And I think if we give that clear that it's a ban, all parks, there's no confusion, and that will actually help. That if there's no confusion and we don't have a specified place, then there will be less likely that we're going to have those problems. I actually remember when restaurants allowed smoking, and it sucked. I hated it. I didn't want to go to restaurants anymore. And yes, there was a huge fit when we passed it when I was living in Iowa. And they passed it and decided, nope, no more smoking in restaurants. And there was a huge fit about it, and everybody threw a fit. But you know what? People eventually complied. And, it's of course, nobody's standing there forcing people not to smoke. And there's still going to be people that'll do it. But if we start it now, then maybe in 20 years, nobody will be smoking in parks anymore. And then we don't have to worry about the trash. It's not going to go in the water and all that garbage. So I just wanted to say that.
Call for the question?
You're out of order, Jim.
No, I can do that.
Yes, I didn't recognize you, and I had something to say anyway. I get to recognize myself. I'm really against passing ordinances that just for passing ordinances. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I'm with Matt. And I'm not sure the Marion County ordinance actually stops that many people from smoking on Marion County property. It stops the staff because they go out to the right-of-way. And by the way, there's 13 feet of right-of-way in front before you get to the Marion County right-of-way in front of Keizer Rapids Park. I'm not for passing ordinances just to pass ordinances, because the police aren't going to enforce that any more than they enforce you can't go in the park after sunset. And our parks, because of that, are a hookup place off Craigslist. Well, we're not dealing with that, but we're dealing with smoking. I'm done. I'm done talking. My blood sugar's getting low and I better shut up. So, is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
No.
Motion passes.
Well, I really, since this is done, I hope from the deepest part of my soul that we're able to make this happen. And I hope that every single person that came and gave testimony on this, if the city council chooses to take action on this, is empowered. And I promise you that if I see it, I'll be one of the first people that says, get the hell out of our parks and stop your habit, take it elsewhere. That's the truth, okay? Because it's a nasty habit. It kills people. It kills families. It creates litter. It causes fire. And I'm hoping that this goes to help those people that want to make a positive change in our city.
Thank you, Matt. We aren't done, Jim.
Well, that's like,
Is there any new old business? Do we have any old business to come along? I'm sorry you saw the dark side of David tonight. Anyway. Do we have any old business left on the agenda, or have we already taken care of that?
No, that we haven't.
All right, any new business? Thank you.
Oh,
Staff,
no, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. There is one issue that came up as it relates to the Keizer Little League fields. If you may have seen, the Little League fields have been vandalized again. I think this is the second time in a few months. More graffiti and things of that nature. Unfortunately, the representative that I expected to be here wasn't able to be here, but they have asked us to consider having the discussion as it relates to the gate near the apartments and locking that during non-use times, but also to consider additional fencing or gating towards the front of the park in order to discourage people from actually entering the park after hours. Recognizing that there are short fences around the perimeter, but once you hop over a fence, it shows intent and gives a little bit more sort of credence to a violation and the offense.
so what do you want us to do?
The request was asked. Unfortunately, like I said, she wasn't able to make it tonight, but she wanted us to consider a conversation about possibly asking that, adding that to the prioritization list as a significant issue of security to the facility.
Yes, Jim?
was there any discussion about lighting?
Not that I recall, but that was also something that was brought up. There was some about possibly adding some nighttime lighting around the parking lot or some other areas that would.
'Cause
You know,
it's
the,
really
the
dark.
problem, the problem with that, and I think we've had this discussion before, is sometimes lighting discourages but also encourages activity. And so it could be if it's a motion activated type thing. I'm not really sure. I don't have the right response for that, but I know some folks were concerned about the graffiti and frankly just general damage to the facility in general. So if that's something that we can have a discussion, if it's feasible, Robert, to possibly add it to the prioritization discussion as an issue of safety or security, that was the request.
Robert, could you look into what lighting would cost us and also maybe a couple security cameras? So we have an idea when we have a discussion.
Yeah, are you talking like parking lot lights, like street lights, like they have in the parking lot that's the large paved parking lot over there? It has street lights in it.
Right, but maybe more all, like Matt said, maybe.
Along the entire frontage?
Maybe something that gets real bright, that shines, a motion detector type thing. And a number of security cameras, so I don't know what those would cost, and if we had a cost idea.
Security cameras can run you anywhere from $100 a piece upwards of $5,000 a piece, depending on the quality you go with.
I like the $100 ones.
Well, the $100 ones don't catch images in the dark.
Well, if we had a light that went on, then.
No.
But anyways,
Well,
it's
and
things
again-
we can consider.
If you have security cameras, you also have to have
Storage.
storage and someone to monitor the feed.
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's an FTE.
Unless there's an actual issue, then you go back to the recording, but that is still a storage issue, and then on-site, it's kind of a nightmare.
I do have one quick question, and it's kind of aimed at Clint. The fencing that's going on up there right now, along the frontage where the gravel parking lot is that just on the outfield area, or is that also on the infield? Are you surrounding the entire field with new fence?
We are surrounding the whole
6
thing.
foot tall fence?
Yes.
So would it be an easy thing to do to add a 6 foot tall gate across the front as well?
Across the front, you're talking about in the outfield?
In between field 1 and 2, where you can
Oh,
enter.
Yes, there will be a gate there.
Will it be 6 feet tall?
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
Good.
I mean, that's a quick improvement that's taking place currently right now up at Little League. Is that there is a taller fence going in. So I mean, there's obviously other ways to get in, but,
We're going to pour the concrete for the post probably Friday,
okay.
because all the fences are down now and the posts are pulled out.
Doesn't resolve the issue of the open
At the front.
walkway
Right.
over near the apartments either. I mean, that was something that was created when the apartments went in. And I know it's been giving them a lot of hassle with dogs and people coming over there using the
Cigarette
park
butts
at all. Yeah, cigarette butts.
So, Clint, the issue was brought up from the recent vandalism at the Little League fields, and I was asked to discuss some security measures that we could possibly take for the fields. I know you stepped out. That's just the background of why this conversation is
Right.
happening.
We're also looking at camera equipment up there, different things to improve what's happening there. A lot of traffic goes through there.
So that was really it, Mr. Chair, for new business. It was a it was a request from folks from Keizer Little League, and I wanted to be a good steward of that information and present it.
It's okay. Thank you for bringing it up, and thank you, Clint, for taking care of it already, or working on it. Robert has a lot of other things to do. It's your turn, Robert.
All right. I do have a lot of things going on. Just started training a new employee. His name is Matthew Wieberdink. He came from us. He was actually a temp for us for the last couple seasons. Did great work, and I'm excited to see where he can go in the future for us. We've also formally placed an order for 3 new trucks. We'll be trading in a 93 Ford Ranger and trading in a 94 Ford Ranger. So do the math on how old those two
Sweet
are.
trucks, Robert.
Yeah, we're getting 3 new
know,
trucks.
It was the best truck
Trading
in
in
the fleet.
antiques, I like that. Antiques that break down often. So, and I think everybody has seen all the trees have come out at Keizer Rapids. They're in 21 large piles, and we're hoping to get those burnt in the next 60 days as weather allows via agriculture practices continue down there. So, did I see a
I have a
question?
question for you,
Yeah.
Robert. Are they going to just farm that entire field instead of just where the orchards were?
Correct. Yep. Take advantage of the center area that was just grass before. Yep.
Okay.
I don't want to keep mowing that
So
if we don't have to.
one of the questions, and this is related to another topic that I'm going to bring up later, but one of the questions was, is there an alternative to burning? Because it was one of the neighbors that lives in the area, and they brought it up as, you know, it's green wood, it's going to smolder for a long time, and they're worried about the smoke and other issues in the area.
Given the amount of trees that were taken out, a couple thousand, that's the only logical way to get rid of those trees. There are other ways you could get rid of them. You could haul the debris away. You could attempt to wood chip it, but it would take crazy amount of labor to do both of those. And by crazy amount, I'm talking possibly a year-long project to do it the other way.
So, and because the burning is on what's designated right now as an agricultural piece of parkland.
Correct.
Burning is a legal
Yes,
activity to
and it's
have.
going to be continued agriculture practices down there for the near future.
There's a lot of oil in Filbert it doesn't mess, it just burns. I don't think you're going to have a smoke problem. Anything else, Robert?
That's it.
Roland?
Yes, let's talk about smoking in the parks again.
Well, first of all, we're late.
Actually,
You
I'm not
did-
going to bring that up because I think we've all had enough of it. It did come
Hey,
up.
Roland,
I'm
you
gonna
were
hit you
late,
up.
you didn't bring donuts.
Yeah, well, I will bring some cookies next time.
All right.
And I do appreciate the passion that we have in our group here. So that's to me that produces stuff. You know, sometimes it's a little edgy, but that's the way it goes. Anyway, some highlights of our council meeting on the 2nd. We talked about the smoking, and we'll get into that as it comes down the road. But some of the things I wanted to bring out, of course, we did approved a liquor license for Waremark. So if you haven't been there, it's kind of cool. I was really impressed. The people are really nice in there, so I'm happy. Also, the plans on moving on our theater. I'm pretty excited about that. Mayor's in the audience today, so we're all pretty excited about that. And some things I want to bring up. Our liaison, youth liaison, name is Sam Hernandez, and he's quite a gentleman, very articulate. And I was so happy to hear that he was accepted at Willamette University. But wait, it gets better. He's also talking to Harvard and Stanford. So there's hopes that
I
he.
considered that too, and I just said no.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Buying the
You went to
shirts?
Stanford, right? You drove by it. Okay, also, budget season's coming up. We didn't talk too much about that, but I'm, May, we have our long range, March, we have our long range planning, and then, of course, it starts on May 1st, correct?
The long-range budget.
It's in March.
The task force meets in March.
Yeah, it's in March.
13th.
And then, of course, in May. And if you haven't been, and Jim, you would know what I'm talking about, but if you haven't been part of a budget process, it's quite
Brutal.
educating. I mean, I was stunned, my very first one. Overall, everything else is pretty smooth. It was kind of and again, we get a few people come in about the parks with questions and concerns about the parks fees, but it's been very civil and very, in fact, I think 99% of the people that complain about it, they leave with a good feeling about it, of what they've done. And so I'm really proud of our council I thought we were gonna get a lot more heat for that, but our community is wonderful because they've supported because they have passion like you folks do for our parks. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. A lady at work just figured out her water bill went up because of the park and police fee. So,
The city services bill.
well, her bill was such that she only got the $8 instead of the 16. She'll be really happy next time. All right. Is there any other business?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Okay. So on February 3rd, I believe it was, the Keizer Rotary Arboretum was complete. There were 43, if I recall, trees that were planted on the trails over at Keizer Rapids. I was out there with Randy Miller and Mark Callier and Mayor Clark and Wayne, and first thing in the morning, and then Katharina came out and helped out, and we got all of the trees planted fairly quickly. We had
45 minutes.
about 45, 50 minutes, but we had a bunch of kids from McNary, a bunch of kids from Whitaker came out. It was a really fun event, and yes, that's correct, that Jim Taylor was there and some other folks, and so Councilor Anderson, and it was just a really great event, and it led to the Rotary Arboretum. So if you're not familiar, each Rotarian was challenged with planting a tree. I think it was statewide or countrywide, if I understand it correct. But on April 21st, the Claggett Creek Watershed Council with the Keizer Rotary is going to be hosting sort of the grand opening of the Arboretum. And it's going to be kind of the Earth Day event where we're going to celebrate the Arboretum. They'll have really nice signs, hopefully by that point, that'll talk about each of the individual trees. And then we're going to have some fun activities for that day. I think Mark Callier is going to bring his boat out and give people a tour around Keizer Rapids via the Willamette. So it's going to be a really fun day that day. What was it, 3 days ago, 4 days, Saturday, February 10th, we had the annual Ben Miller Family Cleanup that I alluded to just a little bit earlier. Normally, it's about 3 of us that go out there and do all the work, and it's not fun. But again, we had about, 8 to 10 Whitaker kids come out and help out. Wayne was there again, helping out with that, which was awesome. And we were able to get the entire park cleaned up, got some invasives removed, and it was a really good project. Again, recognizing that we do have a homeless issue down under that bridge as it crosses down. So we're trying to work on that. It's a struggle. The big thing is, number one, we don't want the homeless, but number two, if they're going to be there, it needs to be, we want to try to discourage the activity because it could be potentially harmful for individuals, and we don't want to see anybody die because of their circumstances. That's exactly right. And so, in addition to that, on March 17th, we have the annual Civic Center cleanup. We generally get about 75 to 100 volunteers for that. We take this entire block, or most of this block, all the way around the Civic Center. I can't ever say it. Chalmers Jones, thank you. The skate park, and we have some folks come in and do a bunch of pre-trimming and everything, and just really do a really good job of beautification. I know the city's in the process right now of trying to get the bark dust arranged for that. But it's a big project. You get a lot of man hours out of it. I think we start generally about 9 and are generally done around noon or 1. Last year was quite the monsoon. It started off right off the bat, and we had, drunk. No, I'm not going to tell that joke. We found some very weird things in the bushes. There was an empty bottle of tequila and a toddler shoe. So drawing all the conclusions there. But anyhow, and so that's coming up again, March 17th, really good event. And frankly, I'm going to throw the challenge out. We've had Wayne at a lot of our most recent events, and Katharina's been in a lot of them. It was nice to see Jim come out. And, if we're doing work in our parks as a parks board, I would just encourage us, Clint notwithstanding, you're in the parks all the time at Keizer League. I mean, your time is precious. But, if you have these opportunities.
Roland always said.
That's right, yeah. If you have the opportunities, come out. And if it's nothing else, if you can't work, help with the sign-ins, help do the waivers and things like that. And people just really, really appreciate that. And I can tell you that hearing from Councilor Anderson and Councilor Reed at the Arboretum Planning, they were very impressed with the fact that finally they started to see some Parks Board folks out there. Again, this is a volunteer time. I can't task you. I can just, hopefully challenge you to want to continue to participate in other ways other than just sitting up here. I think that is it. Just want to welcome again, Zyra. It's very nice to have you here. Good to see a new, fresh face, and looking forward to working with you until they kick me off.
All right, Jim, I'm timing you. You got 30 seconds.
Well, we were talking about the Rotary, our Rotary Club with the trees and everything. So this is the time I'll bring up the fact that our annual Keizer Rotary raffle, which will be April 7th here at the Community Center. Tickets are available for the raffle. You can win $10,000 in gold. They're $50 a piece. You get to come to the party. You get a great meal. You get to meet all the movers and shakers, like Roland and Clint, and our Mayor Kathy Clark will be there. So if you see a Rotarian, and there's a couple here, and you need tickets, anybody out there watching, we have tickets available. It goes to a great thing. All goes back to the community, and you see things like trees and Little League fields and improvements in McNary and scholarships. And so I invite anyone who would like to buy a raffle ticket. And well, I was also going to say, Zyra, very refreshing. You came very prepared. That was very impressive. Thank you.
If anybody does need some Rotary tickets, call Betty Hart. I already got mine from Clint, so I got to make it up to her. So.
Oh, that's what you want.
Thank you.
Any other business? We stand adjourned at 8:49.